The Fulcrum is here today at the UONDP's Progressive Policy Competition on Housing and Homelessness. The competition focuses on students proposing municipal policy recommendations to address the growing precarity in affordable housing across Ontario. Alongside trends like increasing rent evictions and dem-evictions, which are rapidly reducing the number of affordable housing stock and pushing vulnerable tenants out of their homes with few other options, the policy competition raised issues about legislation and policies at all levels of government. Our chat with Sharon, a member of the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now, or Ottawa ACORN, highlighted some of these policy recommendations alongside the corresponding barriers that are faced by tenants in getting their concerns addressed by decision makers. Today I'm here with Sharon from the ACORN. Sharon, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do with the ACORN?
Okay, ACORN is a community organization of low and moderate income people who work for the benefit of low and moderate income people. And we organize events and we take on issues at all levels of government, the federal, provincial, and municipal. One of the things that I mentioned in particular that I think doesn't get talked about enough is the financialization of housing. They don't care about tenants, they don't care about providing housing, they care about making money. They do things like squeezing tenants out of their places so that they can charge more rent to the next person. The tax breaks that are offered to these REITs should be cancelled. You know, these are bodies that are getting tax breaks to have negative impacts on tenants, and that isn't what our tax money should be going for. The main problem there is that when Doug Ford got into power, he cut back on rent control. No more rent control for any buildings built after November 2018, which means that for new buildings, there is no rent control. It meant that over time, the availability of affordable housing diminished drastically. And the other very negative thing, it incentivized the landlords to want to get rid of tenants that had been there for a long time and were still under rent control.
My name is Adriana, and I'm part of the progressive competition that is taking place.
Hi, I'm Bhumi. I'm in my second year doing poli-sci and econ. I guess today we're just coming up with ideas on just fixing or trying to fix the housing crisis in Ottawa, making housing more affordable.
Our three approaches are immediate solutions to housing for people who are already homeless or renters who want to become housing owners. There's density rezoning and anti-finalization and human rights approach, which is mine. Basically what I'm trying to do is to enshrine housing as a human right in Canada by implementing a UN resolution that Canada signed, but it's not yet applied in Parliament, so as to avoid housing becoming a business and more so guarantee that everyone has access to housing as a human right. The implication is there, but it would take time. So we need the legal protection of it first to move forward.
For the immediate solutions, we have two components that we've been working on so far. One of them is that we're looking at just for people who don't have any means to get going, find a job. We have a self-sufficient program that we're going to try to propose where with your participation in the program, you would be guaranteed a job and a place in a housing development. The housing developments would be bought by the government, and the incentive for landlords to sell to the government here would be that they would get a share of the revenue generated from the program. So the people staying in the house would be actively working and sustaining the program. Another avenue for the landlords would be to have rent-to-own properties, in which you would basically just a portion of the rent you would pay every month would go towards you eventually owning the property.
It's basically for renters that have been in a place for several years so far to see their dutiful payment of rent as a down payment so they eventually get to own the space they're living in, so as to guarantee that they don't remain renters forever. And our last approach is density rezoning, making like suburban spaces more dense, so less resident space. Our theory here is that when we make it more walkable and we make it like more accessible in terms of small businesses, it's going to make it easier to build like vertical property. And also we're going to take the angle of parking. There's like this legislation in place in which for each housing provider there's like this amount of parking you got to provide, and that's an obstacle for more housing to be built, especially affordable one. So we're going to try to take that out of the suburbia so it becomes as dense as Ottawa's downtown. So by taking that away, we're trying to make sure that there's not like a homogenization of social classes within housing, sort of as to avoid segregation, economic segregation within the city.
Yeah, we have the worst housing crisis out of a developed nation in Canada. Right now, every time we set a housing target on a provincial, a federal, or municipal level, we consistently fail to hit these targets. Our current way forward is clearly not working. So I'm glad that our fellow executive Elnaz set up this event so we could have some students come together and talk about some solutions that we see to this problem, because it is a problem that affects us as students so deeply. So we don't necessarily have as much money to be paying in this crazy housing market as a lot of other people. It does affect us deeply.
In some ways that we're planning on combating this, at least within our policy recommendations, were one of the ideas we had was fixing the landlord-tenant board in Ontario. Considering that wait times for tenants at least are like 18 months, sometimes more for people, we've looked into licensing requirements for landlords so that they're kept up to date with policy changes, but also like it's ensured that they're actually following the policy that they have to follow. And additionally, we're looking on a municipal level at Ottawa's 10-year housing plan, and like we found some issues with that and we found some good things with that, but we're making recommendations on some things that can change.
Yeah, and on like a federal level, we were also looking at Crown Corporation as a possible solution for this. A lot of our solutions that have been put forward by the municipal, the provincial, the federal government have been very much focused on incentives for private companies to come in and create affordable housing. From what we've been seeing, it clearly hasn't been working super well. So having a government come in with the mandate of creating housing, of creating affordable housing, we think could be the solution. We see this in places like Vienna, where 25% of the housing in Vienna is owned by the government. Like another 25% is semi-controlled by the government. And the housing prices there are significantly better, and it's a lot better of a system for everybody involved.
Hi, we're Group 4 of the Housing Task Force, and we're just going to be introducing what our plan is. Start off, we want to have the City of Ottawa pass a bylaw on the right of first refusal. It's a contractual agreement that gives a party the option to be the first to buy an asset, so have the City of Ottawa to be the first person to have the option of buying an asset on all apartment buildings is what we're trying to implement it on. This would allow the City of Ottawa to identify key spots for social housing. The owner who plans to sell would be required to notify the City of Ottawa what their agreement is and their proposal, and the City of Ottawa can then decide from there.
Yeah, and then another thing we're doing is we are going to match this right of first refusal with a community housing accelerator fund. This would be a pot of money that goes towards acquiring affordable housing that's going on the market to make sure that stays affordable, because one of the biggest issues is that when apartments go for sale, they're often bought by landlords that are trying to squeeze a profit out of them. And so units that used to be affordable now become unaffordable because the landlords renovate people, tear down the whole place. And we're seeing that a lot in Ottawa. Ottawa was the number 3 place in Ontario for like renovictions. And so the plan would be to institute the right of first refusal so that the city can step in and say, okay, actually we want to buy this building, and then provide a pot of money so that the city can buy the building or provide low interest loans to like not-for-profit groups who are interested in buying affordable housing units and keeping them affordable, or also potentially constructing new affordable housing units themselves.
That's it.
ACORN has emphasized the need to protect affordable housing, given that affordable housing stock in Ottawa is rapidly disappearing, with 31 affordable units lost for every 1 unit that's built. The organization has emphasized the implication of this. It means that we can't build our way outside of the housing crisis. We need to protect affordable housing stock now. Some of ACORN's proposed policies, which have been modeled after existing policies in municipalities and provinces across Canada, include its anti-displacement policy, rent stabilization, the anti-renoviction bylaw, and the tenant defense fund. Among these, the proposed anti-displacement policy details provisions such as allowing tenants who are displaced from their rental units to be able to return after development has finished for the same price and number of bedrooms, and that units lost to development must be replaced at a ratio of 1:1 or 25% of the total number of proposed units, whichever is greater. Other proposed policies include rent stabilization, which provides temporary accommodation to tenants who are evicted following redevelopment, or a rental top-up should the tenant choose to find their own temporary accommodations. The participants of today's policy competition are all renters living in Ottawa, showcasing the growing concern among students regarding affordable housing. To learn more about your tenant rights and the issue of housing and homelessness in Ottawa, check out the resources on ACORN Canada's website